All right, let's get going. I am excited to chat with everybody today. I am Jamie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vitally. We are a customer success platform. We'll dig into that a little bit here, but today we're going to talk about two common practices of customer success, health scores and QBRs. We're going to kind of approach them with a critical mind, reinvent them, talk about alternatives, maybe ruffle some feathers. I might poke at some holes that maybe you all are doing, but it's all in the sake of improvement. So let's get going here. Wait, which button do I hit to get going? The big green one, okay. It didn't do anything. There it goes. So anyways, quick blurb about Vitally. We're a next-gen customer success platform. We help teams maximize the productivity of their customer success team, increase visibility into their customer data, and better collaborate with their own internal teams as well as the end customer. That might sound a little bit maybe unconventional compared to other customer success platforms. I'm hitting this button and it's doing nothing, by the way. There we go. It's like a 10-second delay. That might sound a little unconventional compared to other customer success platforms, and the reason for that is actually this phrase here. This is a value of the company, question convention. What that essentially means is whenever you're approached with a problem or a challenge, try to approach the solution to that with an open mind, without bias, deconstruct the problem, reconstruct the solution. If you end up with the solution that was maybe what you thought was going to be the obvious solution, great. At least you question what you were doing, but perhaps you create something new. Perhaps you create something better. And so that's the philosophy we take to our business, and that's what we're going to kind of take to health scores and QBRs. So what makes a good health score? And I'm going to kind of run through these. Of course, there's many more bullets that we could go through here, but one that has significant focus on your product and what makes it unique. You should not be able to look at somebody else's health score and how it's built, and at least if you're looking at the product kind of analytics side of it, be able to get much from it because you don't work at that company. That product is different than your product that you're working on. We all should be working at companies that are offering customers unique value from the product that we're selling, and your score needs to model what makes your business, your product unique so that you can ensure you're providing the customer with unique value. It should also focus health scoring kind of differently based on implementation and recurring usage. So, as we buy software, we of course have to implement that software first. If you're purchasing our software, you have to connect some integrations, set up a health score, set up some automations, things like that. And then only once there's some data to experiment with, some workflows to follow, then you invite the end users to use the software on a daily or weekly basis. But if the product is not really implemented well, then it kind of muddies the signal of recurring usage, right? Because users are experiencing a poorly implemented product. They're not experiencing it in the way that you want them to experience it. And so being able to look at your health score and understand if the product's in a healthy spot to actually be used and experience recurring value is important. And then, of course, measuring recurring usage and recurring value is important as well. One that weighs stakeholder and decision maker sentiment a little bit more than general users. I put in parentheses here, just not by much. We'll kind of dig into that a little bit. But, naturally there is a stakeholder that typically is the, buy or cut decision maker. And we do want that person to, of course, be extraordinarily happy with our product. And so it's important to understand where they stand when it comes to their opinion about the product. But stakeholders change, people change jobs, you bring in a new stakeholder, and if that occurs, that stakeholder sentiment is basically a lost signal. It doesn't apply anymore. And so making sure you weigh it but not over-indexing on it is important, just for that kind of scenario where they end up being the actual renewal decision maker. But ideally your health score also shows value in other areas so that you can win over another stakeholder that gets tagged in. And this is the fourth bullet point here is something I'm pretty passionate about because I don't see this a lot with health scores. Something that scores the customer against their historical usage. Because we all use products differently. And health scores, the ones that I typically see, kind of grade customers on the same kind of playing field. It says you're healthy if you do this X times a day or a week or whatever it is, if this metric is this value. And that is hard to get right across, a customer base of hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands. because everybody's different. Somebody might log into a product once a week and experience value. Somebody might log into a product 5 times a week and experience value. But if your health score says, oh, I want you to log in 3 times a week, you're saying that the person who is experiencing value that's doing it 1 time a week is an unhealthy customer when they're not. But what's important to understand is, does that person who's logging in once a week, do they stop? Is the person that's logging in 5 times a week, are they now logging in 3 times a week? Like the trend, understanding that trend and where the customer is like deviating from their historical behavior is important, so that you're kind of grading the customer against their self, and you're detecting when there's different like patterns in their behavior, because that's a very important sign to whether the customer is healthy or things are changing or not. And then the last one is kind of perception versus reality. The customer perceives that they maybe, or they like the product, right? Like they give you an NPS score that's high. They submit a survey response that says, I love the product. They tell you that they're experiencing value, that they're a fan of the product. But does the data show that they're actually experiencing value? Because again, if that stakeholder leaves, if things change, then perception meets reality. You have to win over a new stakeholder, and you have to show that new stakeholder the data that proves value is being seen. And so making sure that you kind of balance that in your health score is important, so that if a different reality presents itself, you can win somebody over with data, but you also understand how are things being perceived right now. And then what makes a potentially dangerous health score? There's, we'll talk a little bit about this. Vanity metrics are, they can be useful at times, but again, they're universal. And if your health score is composed of the same things that other health scores are built on in terms of like measuring product usage, then you're not really measuring your product's unique value. It's not important if sometimes it's not important if the customer's logging in, if they're using it 5 hours a week or whatever. It's important what they're doing when they're actually in the product. Are they using it in the way that you want them to use it, in the way that drives value for their business? And so I would love for the health scores just to omit these in general, but if you do want to put those in there, don't over-index on them. The second one's definitely probably something that most health scores do, where they focus on customer communication. And they say, if the customer's communicating with me, with the business, they're maybe healthy or they're not. Like they submitted 10 tickets last week. Sometimes you might even say that's healthy, sometimes you might say that that's not healthy. But again, everybody's different. Some customers never talk to their vendors. I never talk to our vendors. I'm a busy guy. I don't have time to tell you if I experience a bug or if I have a feature I did. It's not, it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not in my personality, but other people love that. They love trying to better the product that they purchase. They love providing feedback. But again, if you're looking at it from like a pure tickets perspective and you say, oh, the customer submits 5 tickets a month or whatever, like that's our ideal range. It depends on what those tickets are about. Maybe they're submitting those and saying, hey, love the product, just so you know you have this minor bug here. Or maybe they're saying, once again, I encountered a bug. This is driving me crazy. Please fix this. So if you can actually get that sentiment, that tone in your health scoring, I think that's an important or like an interesting signal for health scoring. But the fact that like the customer's communicating with you is not all that interesting from a health scoring perspective. Again, I think if you look at the historical usage, that might get more interesting. Like, does the customer typically communicate with you? And then if they stop doing that, that's an interesting signal. But just again, trying to put everybody on the same playing field is potentially dangerous when it comes to communication. NPS is, again, another common one, but NPS weighs the loudest voices in the room. The most common scores on NPS are 0 or 1 or 9 and 10. The medium, the middle scores are not common because it's like you leaving a review on like Yelp or Google. You only do it if you're really happy or you're really frustrated. And so if one person speaks up and says, I love the product, but there's 99 other users that don't give you that signal, that's not really a huge data set to weight in your health score. And again, it kind of weighs the loudest voices in the room, and it doesn't give equal weight to those that are maybe a little bit quieter. AI-based health scores. AI is all the rage. Thank you, ChatGPT, for making it a huge topic these days. I love the application of like that when it comes to like leveling up a CSM and having them like write better emails and things like that. But from like an actual health scoring perspective, it can be a real challenge to get this right. the data that you have is massive, typically, especially as data systems mature, as analytics tools mature, as we invest more in like data warehouses. It's a huge, huge data set that takes forever to train. And there's a lot of signal in there that is not relevant to customer health. And so if you try to rely on AI to tell you the moment that a customer is a churn risk or not, it will get some of it right, but it also will probably get a lot of it wrong. And you might go down rabbit holes, you might get a lot of false flags that you're chasing down. And I think maybe eventually we'll get there, but I don't know if from a purely health scoring perspective, we're gonna get there in the next couple of years. I think it's a very challenging thing. I love for a company to figure it out. I've just not seen it done yet. And then over-indexing on CSM and stakeholder sentiment, we touched on this, so I'm gonna kind of breeze through it, but it kind of contradicts the last slide. Again, you wanna factor it in, but eventually CSMs change, stakeholders change, people's perceptions deviate from reality. And so making sure that you always have the data to win over a new stakeholder and not overloading on somebody that may not be involved in the buying purchase later on is important. And again, this thing is not moving at a rapid speed. There we go. The most dangerous health score is one that your team blindly trusts. This is a bit of a loaded statement, but health scores naturally obfuscate data. They hide signals because it's a roll-up equation on top of a large data set, right? Which is natural. Like, we're busy people. We need to understand if a customer is healthy or not. I get that, but the reason I had that doctor kind of gif on the last slide was that imagine if you went to the doctor and the doctor, all they did was look at a single score. And if the score said you were healthy, they told you were healthy and they sent you on their way. That's not what doctors do, and you all are essentially doctors to your customers, and your customers are the patients. And so, actual good doctors have a long chart that tells them every single signal on your cholesterol, your blood pressure, at what diseases you're at risk for, and they take that entire thing into account as they update you on your health as an individual. And so if CSMs or customer success professionals are consistently just looking at a score, and if they see it's healthy, not digging in much deeper beyond that, they're potentially missing out on a lot of critical signals, because the health score, again, it's obfuscating data that is potentially very important, and it's also hard to get this very right, which leads me to the fact that, whoops, how do I go back? There we go. Now it's going fast. There we go. The hard truth is CS professionals are not data scientists, and a health score is essentially a data science problem, like an actual accurate health score. But you all are asked to do a very challenging job. You're given a huge data set, and you're asked to create an equation on top of that data set that tells you customer health. It can be right, it can be wrong, it can be somewhere in between, but this is not what we're trained to do. And so if we don't have dedicated data scientists figuring this out, there's a lot of variability to the accuracy of it. And I think it's important to understand that as a CS professional, so that you don't basically blindly follow your health score and assume it is fully accurate and always the source of truth for the customer's health. But we're not here just to critique, here to suggest alternatives. And so what is potentially an alternative to health scores? I like alerts or signals, a system that tells you when anomalies in behavior occur, when there's important signals to act on. And by definition, I think these are more proactive than health scores, because when CSMs log into a tool and they see a health score, again, they see that every day. And it's human behavior when you see something every day to start to overlook it, to start to just assume it's there and move on about your day. And it doesn't really keep CSMs proactive. And that's what customer success is, right? It's all about being proactive. Alerts are a more proactive form, when compared to health scoring, because good ones are not always there. They're letting you know that there is something potentially to act on, and a good system would let you, quiet alerts if they need to be shut off, because the CSM knows, oh, I know the stakeholder changed, but I'm on it. I don't need to do this. It also allows you to build more precise playbooks as these specific scenarios come up, because there is an exhaustive set of alerts, of signals that you would want to see as a CSM, and you can develop playbooks for each of those alerts and use automation or, of course, manual intervention to kick those playbooks off as these alerts come up. And so I think you'll all get the slides after this. I wanted to kind of create a list of all the signals, not all, some of the signals that you could do and apply to your typical day-to-day. There's, of course, way more than these, and I'm happy to, brainstorm and add more. We don't have time to go through really hardly any of these because I've got half my time left. But hopefully, once you get a hold of the bulleted list, this sparks some, interesting thoughts and processes for you to develop. But let's move on to QBRs. What is the hopeful definition of a QBR? It's a quarterly overview of the value a customer is receiving from your business or your product. And I put hopeful in parentheses because we would all love if, although this is a very creepy kind of GIF on purpose, we would all love this to be like our envision of the end of a QBR, right? The customers in the room, they're super happy. They're so glad that you told them all of this interesting stats about the value they're seeing. Such a great decision to buy your product. Such a great job. We'll see you next quarter, right? We want that to be the case for a QBR. But in reality, QBRs can commonly be cop-outs for understanding renewal sentiment. I'm sure you all either have done or have had someone on your team do this. There's a customer, they're paying you a decent amount of money, you haven't talked to them in a while, you believe they might potentially turn off your product, and so you send them an email and you say, under the disguise of a QBR, you say, hey, I want to run you through a QBR, let you know about the value you're receiving from your business, and by the way, at the end of it, I'm going to ask if you're renewing or not. And that's a lot of work just to ask that end question. It's also a significant time investment from the customer. Remember, you're just a vendor to your customers. They have dozens of other vendors. And asking them to spend 1 hour every quarter with you in a meeting is a little selfish. If every other vendor did that, then the customer is just spending a ton of time in QBR meetings with all of their vendors. And, this is what they end up thinking. They're just maybe I'll do it. I'll probably check Slack or email as I'm doing it. But, at the end, I'll walk off. I'll say, maybe I'll learn some things, but why couldn't that have just been an email or something that I could have seen? Did we really need me to block out an hour of my time just to hear a manufactured success story? Because QBRs are, again, you control the narrative and you're trying to pitch things in the best possible light. Whether it's the actual reality is potentially not the case. And so you may have seen some of our branding around this that our team has done. We're here to declare that QBRs are dead. But for every death, there is life. There is rebirth. And we are not just killing it and saying, end of the day, job's done. We're here to potentially propose an alternative. Well, not potentially. We are going to propose an alternative. And it's something that I call an MVR, monthly value review. I specifically chose monthly because I think quarterly is a long time. If you're literally training your CSMs to only remind the customer that they're experiencing value from the product every 3 months, the customer's going a lot of time potentially not thinking about your product. But I envision an MVR as sort of the antithesis to a QBR. It is an asynchronous thing that occurs. It is a collaborative thing that occurs. It allows the customer to ideally read and engage with the MVR, with what you're trying to tell them on their own time. It's not asking them to block off an entire hour of something. It's giving them something that they can read, take a break, come back to, that they can submit answers to, questions and answers to on their own time. It's something that's much more modern than a traditional meeting. And getting back to question convention, my team will know that I'm pretty anti-meeting. I think meetings are the obvious answer to every question. In business, it's oh, I don't know that. Let's schedule a meeting. And I think that's sometimes, again, the right way to go, but often not. There are more modern and innovative ways to solve these problems rather than requiring multiple people to block off hours of their time just to, listen to a synchronous kind of conversation that's going on. This is an async world that we're living in. We need to get used to it. And I think the benefit of this too is that it gives you more flexibility, more freedom to communicate and showcase the value that the customer is receiving, to actually see what they've done, to revisit what they should do in your product or with your business, to see their progress toward goals, to remind themselves of what they said 6 months, 12 months ago, of what their goals were, and if they're experiencing that. And it allows them to actually just continue to keep themselves and your team accountable towards a centralized record of what you all agreed on, what you were all trying to achieve. And so what we've done is created, Hallie, this is not update. My link's not up there. That's fine, don't worry about it. I built a template in Coda for everyone. This QR code, I think, should take you to it. I was hoping to kind of pull it up and walk everybody through it. It might be, we have 9 minutes, so maybe we can do it. But Coda is, if you're not familiar with Coda, it's like a Notion, kind of like tool with some subtle differences. I think it's a pretty cool product. I've created it publicly so you all can get to the link. And it kind of gives you a sample that you can maybe hopefully build off with. If you wanted to apply this in replacement of your QBRs. And again, it would be better if I could show it, but I'll try to paint a picture. It allows you to actually show graphs, to actually have structured survey questions in the document, allows the customer to actually submit answers to these questions and whatnot. I will do a quick shameless plug. Vitally has a feature called Docs that's somewhat similar. We are not a Coda competitor. Coda's an actual customer of ours. We love them. But the power of Vitally Docs is that they're powered by your customer data, and it syncs back to your customer record. And so if you wanted to talk about that, let us know. But Coda's also a fantastic tool, and also, of course, serves a lot more purposes than just customer success. And so hopefully this template can be used to inspire some new processes for you. I think that is the end. I hope that was useful, that we were able to maybe get you questioning some common things that you have been doing probably for 10, 15 years. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. Yeah.
Questions? What's your personal life?
I would love to answer that question. I don't know if this is the best environment for it. See me after.
So I love the leave behind and the idea of being able to send an MVR. Is it?
MVR is what I call it, yes.
Okay.
Patent pending.
What are some of the learnings creating that? Anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I couldn't stop thinking of new ways to take it because it's interesting, like putting yourself through that process. You're basically sitting in front of a blank canvas, and you're like, oh, what kind of painting can I picture? And so I started to think, because Coda lets you, as do Vitally Docs, lets you, structure embedded questions that the customer can actually provide answers to. And it started making me think if I actually did this every month with my customers, what's an interesting signal I might want to ask my customer every month? How can I track that over time and see how it trends over time? An obvious one is renewal sentiment. How likely on a scale of 1 to 10 are you to renew with us in the next year? And you can see that trend over time. And there's infinite possibilities for that. You can apply this outside of MVR. We actually run our implementation onboarding process off of, we're actually on Notion, but on Notion documents as well. We're transitioning to our own feature, of course, our own product, but we used to do it off of Notion documents. And it just inspires creativity. It gets teams in a more modern way to work that I think continuously raises the bar and keeps that, if the slides are great, but they don't give you the flexibility of doing things that Notion and Coda and Vitally Docs let you do these days. And so I like to inspire that creativity with my team and see what other possibilities they can apply these tools for.
I saw her hand.
Oh, no. Go for it.
I was going to ask, you were talking about alerts. With your alerts, do you recommend kind of feeding the user receiving the alert next best action or
Absolutely,
recommended articles?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. I think the best alerts are ones that allow you to route the alert to a specific human. For example, if it is an alert that maybe, I mean, this is like a kind of a, maybe a little more of a technical example, but like an alert around like an integration that is disconnected, that's a critical integration or that stops working, that should go to the implementation specialist or the onboarding specialist. But an alert around like, you know, a stakeholder that's changed their jobs and is no longer at the company should go to the CSM. An alert around a dramatic increase in seat purchases should go to like a renewal specialist. And of course, those should have tied to them, like, you know, recommended playbooks and next steps. But the best alerts are also ones that, like, you know, with one click for the person that the alert's been routed to, they can shut it off. They can say, I know, I'm on it, I've already handled this. And so yeah, they should definitely have like some recommended next steps attached to them.
Is there somebody back there that was?
We can go to next if you want. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so one of the biggest proponents of QBRs at my current org and at previous orgs I've been to is the AE.
Sure.
Because the AE knows that they're going to have the decision maker there, they're going to have a captive audience, and it's a great chance for them to like pitch expansion. So by swapping this out, how do you address that with the AE and still make sure that they're getting that a chance to have that?
It's a great question. I would say that the point of a QBR is not for the AE to use it as a chance to get more money.
Yeah, but it's a nice side benefit.
Yeah, for sure. But like the value of something like this is that they get armed with data to better educate a dedicated discussion around that. Because again, the QBR is not, you don't want your salespeople hijacking the QBR to be like, and by the way, if all you did was did this and this and paid us like $10,000 more, like, you know, you'll be in a better spot next year. You want that to be a more strategic discussion with a dedicated topic so that everybody's kind of on the same page. Like, this is what we're talking about. And an MVR-like process gives that AE plenty of data to educate them. When is the time to have that discussion, to show the data to the stakeholders, to the buyers around like, here, look, this is what we're seeing on our side. This is direct input from you that's showing that you're experiencing value, that's showing that you're achieving your goals. Let's talk about getting you onto another product that we offer, on increasing your licenses, because we've achieved our goals and it's time to answer the question of what's next.
Cool. Thanks.
I think we just have one more question, if that's okay. It's a bit twofold. So the first one's just yes or no. Are you telling your CSMs to actively pitch MVRs to their teams that they work with?
That's a great question. No, because I created an MVR inspired by this chat, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Okay.
But we're in the process of doing something like that. We'll roll it out in our own internal docs feature. We launched this in November, so we're still moving processes over to it. But we're in the process of doing things like this, yes.
Okay.
But this talk inspired and instigated a little bit more action, at least on my part.
Okay, you're off the hook for the second question because it would have been like, how is that going? Because shifting mindsets like that is just hard.
I know. I will say. I mean, I think the biggest challenge, is probably in getting your team to do it. I think the customer will react better to it because again, it's less of an ask for them. They get to actually do things on their own time, on their own schedule. I will say that our rollout of our docs, kind of like our process built around like docs like this, has gone very well for implementation. It's allowed teams to better structure and align on what are you trying to achieve, where are we at in that process, what have you done, what haven't you done, what's next, and that generally applies to a QBR. It's the same thing. It's just more fast forwarding and revisiting what you said you wanted to do with the product, what value you said you wanted to see, and then pivoting it more towards, hey, you're actually seeing it. But here's our recommended next step because there's more to achieve. If they let me do it, I have 1 minute. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got 1 minute.
All right.
I mean, sometimes it's hard enough to get executives to join a quarterly review. I understand you're saying they would have to have less involvement because it would be shorter, but like, how do you suggest getting even, more frequent executive buy-in when?
It's a good question. I mean, you don't have to do them every month. You could do a QVR, quarterly value review. But I mean, I think, again, if you use a tool that they're already, because I do believe that like work is gravitating towards like this generally. Like we're all gravitating towards similar UI, similar tools. And so the more that you kind of show your customers that you are evolving, that you are modernizing, I think the more inclined they will be to provide you the feedback that you're looking to get. I mean, again, if they weren't going to hop on an hour-long call with you, and then they don't engage in your MVR, then they're probably just a really busy executive that's going to be hard to get a hold of. Perhaps you want to look at your pricing model in the renewal discussion and say, we'll give you a discount and incentive if you go through this process, if you give us these signals or not. But yeah, there are certainly executives out there that are just going to be very difficult to get a hold of regardless. You can look at very micro-based QVRs that are like pulse surveys, like, I promise this is only going to take 90 seconds. I want answers to 3 questions. That's all I want. And what you're going to see with this MVR template is certainly not a micro survey, but there are ways to kind of evolve it to, optimize for a very busy professional. All right? All righty. Thank you, everybody.